day and welcome to Red Eyes Radio. Thank you for tuning in. It's good to have you with us as we continue to explore further and go deeper into the mysteries of this world and beyond. Take a good look around on our site for much more of the things that we find interesting and of importance, of course. Laird Scranton is the author of The Science of the Dogon, Decoding the African Mystery Tradition, and also Sacred Symbols of the Dogon, the key to advanced science in the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. He's also got a new book coming out now in October called The Cosmological Origins of Myth and Symbol, from the Dogon to the ancient Egypt, to India, Tibet, and China. And Laird has done extensive research on the intriguing Dogon people of Africa, their symbols, myths, mysterious origins, and knowledge. And he joins us here today on the program to discuss some of these things. If you've never heard about the Dogon before, this is going to be a really exciting program for sure, so do stay with us. If there's any websites here that you'd like to check out, the best way, or best place rather, to go is either to Amazon.com or the publisher InnerTraditions.com to find more information about Laird's book, but we will have them linked up on RedEyesCreations.com as well. But with that, welcome to Red Eyes Radio, Laird. We're very pleased to have you with us here today.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here.
Laird, why don't you briefly just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in terms of some of the things that you've been researching now for quite a few years here. How did you get involved in the Dogon, Laird?
Yes, I'm a software designer by profession, and I stumbled upon the Dogon quite by accident, reading for pleasure. My wife had provided me with a book called Unexplained by Jerome Clark, and each chapter of that book refers to some unexplained mystery in the world. And one of those chapters was devoted to the Dogon, who seemed to know some things about astronomy that they shouldn't be able to know without technological equipment like telescopes. And so I was intrigued by that fact and started to research about them. I read a book by Robert Temple called The Serious Mystery, and then started following his sources, which took me to anthropological studies of the Dogon and so forth. And I've been studying the Dogon and related cultures for about 15 years now. I discovered that the Dogon are really represent a kind of crossroads between a number of different ancient traditions. The Dogon are really a modern-day African tribe. They still exist. They represent about 300,000 individuals who live in Mali, which is an area in northwest Africa, just below Morocco. They live in a very inhospitable environment in a desert along a large escarpment of cliffs. And the Dogon are a priestly tribe, and they retain a very clear sense of their own religious tradition. And the more you study it, the more you realize that the tradition touches on some very important and interesting things. For one thing, the Dogon share many things in common with Judaism. They wear skull caps and prayer shawls, and they circumcise their young. They celebrate a Jubilee year like happens in Judaism. They also practice many of the same civil traditions as ancient Egypt. They observe the same calendars. They found their cities and districts in pairs called Upper and Lower. And their religious tradition itself shares many things in common with ancient Buddhism.
I know that there's Ethiopian Jews, what is known as Beta Israel. And do you think that there could be any relationship here between the Ethiopian people and the Dogon tribes?
Absolutely, I do. I think that there is a common, a very ancient tradition common to both. Now, that's not to say that one necessarily came from the other, but that they both, it'd be as if you and I shared the same science teacher. And so we had many of the same references because we, at various points, had been taught by the same person.
Why don't we get into a little bit of who this science teacher might be? Because just as you mentioned briefly there, they have a scientific knowledge, as it seems to be the case. Astronomy, certain stars in our galaxy, as it were, that we can go into more detail later on here. But who do you think the scientists were? Where did they get their knowledge from?
Okay, well, the way to get at that question from a research standpoint is through comparative cosmology, which is really what I practice. It's as if you had three different copies of the same Shakespeare play, and Shakespearean plays were the copies we have were mostly written down in haste as someone listened to the play, and so the different copies are sometimes have variations one to the other. Same thing happens here. You have what looks like differing copies of an original source or text or tradition, and by comparing several different similar copies, you can extrapolate back as to what the original may have actually looked like. And so my work has been to compare the similarities and differences between the Dogon and ancient Egypt, or the Dogon and Buddhism, and try to interpret which pieces were original and which pieces were added on in each culture.
Mm. Do you think that Dogon holds a kind of a more of an original teaching, and more of an original formula, if you will, of the knowledge that existed in the ancient world?
Yes, I think they do. In my experience, what happens is that cultures that never developed a written language, tend to hold on to their traditions better than those that did develop a written language. And so the Dogon appear to preserve a tradition that falls conceptually just before the emergence of writing in Egypt. There are many factors that suggest that they have things in common with pre-dynastic tribes and things in common with very early Egypt that make it appear that what we're looking at is a version of ancient Egypt that was very, very early. Those traditions were originally presented mnemonically. I remember watching an episode of the television comedy Cheers, in which one of the characters is trying to teach the other one history, and he decides to do it by singing it to him in the form of a song. And everyone I know who ever saw the episode picked up all of the details of the history simply through one listen to the song. Well, the tradition of the Dogon is all laid out mnemonically, the same way Buddhism is originally laid out mnemonically. And so an initiate who can remember how to perform certain acts can automatically recreate details of their mythological or cosmological tradition.
That's very interesting. And in that sense, then, they seem to have a lot in common with some of the Northern European, like the Celts and the Druids and what have you. They also had a strong, bardic tradition and things like that they preserve the knowledge through song and music, basically.
Yes, and so far, virtually in every region that I have looked,